The Cure Code by Edwina Longbottom, Prologue. The hospital room was still. No machines beeped, no fluorescent light buzzed. Just a faint murmur of filtered air through a ceiling vent and the rhythmic wheeze of an oxygen mask. The man in the bed, skin pale, eyes sunken, chest heaving shallowly, had been written off by the system. Stage 4 pancreatic. Weeks at best. Dr. Benjamin Kroll adjusted the IV line with a tremor in his hand. He was breaking every oath he'd ever sworn as a physician, and yet it felt more like penance than betrayal. He glanced over at the cooler beside the bed. Inside, wrapped in sterile foil, was a vial marked with an unregistered sequence ID. No official approval, no trial, no name, just a code, CKR13. Kroll looked down at the patient's chart. Daniel Owens, age 41, 2 daughters, 3 failed rounds of chemo, 1 Hail Mary. He inserted the needle. 2 hours later, the tumors began to shrink. By morning, the growths in Daniel's liver had halved in size. His fever broke. Oxygen demand dropped. Cell counts normalized. An impossible recovery. Kroll stared at the latest scan in stunned silence. But instead of joy, a cold sweat crept down his neck. He wasn't alone. A woman in a charcoal suit stood behind him, arms folded, expression unreadable. Her badge said she was with hospital administration, but Kroll had never seen her before. "You didn't follow protocol," she said. Don't speak." She held out a hand. "Give me the vial and the logs. But this could save." Now Dr. Kroll. Behind her, 2 men in maintenance uniforms blocked the hallway. No names, no smiles. That night, Daniel Owens was transferred to an undisclosed facility. His family received a carefully worded letter, citing a clerical error and sudden complications. His case was erased from the hospital's digital records. And CKR13 disappeared from every known database. Chapter 1, The Accidental Miracle. Dr. Samuel Kline hadn't seen sunlight in 3 days. The air inside Lab 7B at the University of Vermont was a mixture of coffee, ozone, and the sterile chill of overworked refrigeration units. Petri dishes lined the stainless steel bench like tiny ceramic moons. Monitors blinked in irregular pulses, showing a dance of colored proteins across simulated DNA strands. Samuel sat hunched in a rolling chair, fingers flying across the keyboard. His beard was wild, shirt untucked, eyes red-rimmed but alert. He wasn't chasing a cure. Not exactly. His research had started with a simple question. Why do certain animal species, like the naked mole rat, never get cancer? 3 years, 4 rejected grants, and a dozen failed hypotheses later, he had narrowed it down to a genomic interaction between 2 little-known genes, TPX5 and ZN3B. Tonight, something changed. The simulation run that should have crashed after 5 iterations kept going, folding, binding, releasing. A self-repair loop triggered by exposure to an unstable synthetic protein. "Come on," Samuel whispered, dragging a graph overlay across the screen. The results compiled. He ran it again and again, then shifted the protein model into a human genome scaffold. The cancer cells were dying, all of them. Not mutating, not resisting, just dying. Targeted apoptosis, triggered by the new molecule. He staggered back from the screen. This wasn't chemotherapy. It wasn't radiation. It was elegant, clean, selective. He cross-referenced the results with archived zebrafish data from Anita's folder. Same reaction. Tumor regression in less than 12 hours. Holy shit. His hands shook as he activated the auto-sampler. The incubator confirmed viability. He checked the PCR logs. No contamination. The code was clean. His mouse, tagged with fluorescent tumor markers, lay twitching in its enclosure. The tumors were visibly shrinking. He double-checked the scan, then again. It's real. It's fucking real. The clock on the wall clicked over to 3:42 a.m. He didn't notice the red light blinking on the corner camera. He'd disabled it months ago, or so he thought. Outside, in the corridor, a motion sensor quietly tripped. Samuel typed faster. He didn't see the message slide silently into his university inbox. Subject: Immediate access revoked. From Office of Research Compliance. Your research has been flagged for review pending legal counsel. Do not attempt to publish or transfer data. All digital assets are now property of the University of Vermont per grant agreement. He stared at the message, and then, calmly, methodically, Samuel reached for the backup drive in his coat pocket. "Not today," he muttered. He shut down the system, packed the mouse enclosure into its container, slipped the flash drive into his sock, and walked out of the lab without looking back. Outside, the wind cut through his coat. A pair of headlights turned slowly onto the road behind him. Too slow. Samuel picked up his pace. The miracle had just been born, and someone already wanted it dead. Chapter 2. Shadows over the lab. Samuel sat in his car, engine off, keys in hand. The university's biomedical sciences lot was empty, except for a dusting of sleet on the windshields and a single black SUV parked at the far end. The kind with tinted windows and government plates. The kind that didn't belong here. He reached for the flash drive in his sock again, as if it might vanish if he didn't keep touching it. His backup. His proof. His ticket to saving millions, or to getting buried beside his career. They know, not how far I've gone, but enough to shut me down. A burst of static crackled from a nearby maintenance speaker. The emergency lighting system flickered once, then returned to normal. He drove straight home. Samuel's apartment was in the back of an old Victorian, split into rentals near Burlington's downtown edge. It had charm, if you considered uneven floorboards and questionable plumbing part of that charm. He double-locked the door, drew the curtains, and placed the mouse container gently on the kitchen table. The creature inside was asleep, breathing steady, fluorescence still visible in the underbelly. The tumors had all but receded. He should have been elated. Instead, he booted up his offline laptop and began to sort files into encrypted partitions. Scientific logs, lab footage, RNA maps, visual proof of the before and after, annotated research notes. His hand hesitated over one particular folder, Personal Miriam. Inside were photos and audio files from his late wife's battle with ovarian cancer. Chemo had ravaged her. Hair, bones, memory gone layer by layer. She'd begged him to stop treatment in the end. He hadn't listened until it was too late. They sold her hope at $5,000 a dose, and it bought her agony. He closed the folder and wiped a tear from his cheek. Then he started writing the abstract that could change everything. At 7:18 a.m., the vice-chancellor of research at the university received a message marked Confidential Priority, Red. It originated from a satellite office of the Department of Health and Human Services. Attached was a scan of Samuel's lab report, pulled from university servers 3 hours earlier. Subject line: Intervention Protocol Recommendation, CKR Discovery. Samuel didn't sleep. He sipped coffee with shaking hands as he scanned online backups. His university email was inaccessible, locked. His cloud storage gone. Even his phone plan had been suspended due to suspicious activity. He stared at the dead screen. Then came a knock. 3 raps, soft but firm. Samuel froze. A woman's voice. "Dr. Kline, it's Claire Jensen. You asked for a callback last year about the Kessler report." Claire, the journalist? He peered through the peephole. Medium-length chestnut hair, leather jacket, unmarked shoulder bag, no badge. He cracked the door but didn't open it. "I never asked for a visit." "You didn't. But when someone starts scanning my dark archive from an unregistered IP at UVM, I pay attention." Samuel opened the door. They sat opposite each other in the kitchen, the mouse enclosure between them. Claire didn't flinch when the mouse twitched. "Tell me you have redundancy," she said, "and not just one flash drive shoved in your sock." Samuel half smiled. "I've got one printed copy of the RNA breakdown, hidden in a cereal box. Frosted Flakes, Raisin Bran." She nodded approvingly. "You're even more paranoid than the whistleblowers I usually deal with." "Good." She leaned in, eyes scanning him. "Walk me through it. No jargon." Samuel took a breath. "I've isolated a protein chain that prompts selective apoptosis in mutated cells. Cancer cells across the board. It's a genetic off switch that uses the body's own self-regulation code." Claire blinked. "All cancers?" He nodded. "No radiation, no chemo, no stem cell hijacking, no synthetic virus delivery vectors." "It works clean." She leaned back slowly. "Jesus Christ." "You can't go public," Claire said flatly. Samuel frowned. "That's the point." "No. That's how you get buried. You have no corporate firewall, no government credentials. You drop this and you're either discredited or disappeared. He raised an eyebrow. Disappeared. What is this, a movie? Claire stood and opened her bag. Inside, laminated photos, redacted memos, a wrinkled photo of a woman in a hospital gown, marked deceased. I've been chasing suppressed cure cases for 8 years. You ever heard of Andrea Pinto? Samuel shook his head. She had a breast cancer vaccine prototype. Her lab caught fire. Gas leak, they said. No backup data. No patent filing. No trace. Another photo. Dr. Eldred Sharifi, prostate reversal therapy. Vanished on a hike in Colorado. Recovered a year later, minus 2 fingers and most of his tongue. Claire's voice dropped. They don't sue you. They erase you. Outside, a gray sedan idled for 10 minutes, then pulled away. Inside, Samuel watched Claire's hands tremble as she packed the photos away. Why are you helping me? Because my mother died believing some pink ribbon campaign was going to save her. I've spent every minute since then trying to prove the bastards in suits don't care about cures, only quarterly returns. Samuel stood up and paced. All right, what now? Claire tapped her temple. We build leverage. Make the release bigger than either of us. At that same moment, 2,000 miles south in Atlanta, a man named Victor Langley was reading a printed summary. CKR-13 discovery, intercepted draft report, source, University of Vermont offsite leak, Jensen. Security risk, severe economic threat index, class 4, revenue disruption over $2 trillion. Victor closed the folder. Is he dead yet? His assistant shook his head. Unconfirmed location. Some chatter suggests Jensen's helping him. Langley reached for a lighter, set fire to the folder, and watched it curl into black ash. Then send a cleaner, someone local. Claire and Samuel relocated that evening to a friend's empty lake house an hour outside Montpelier. No internet, no neighbors, just pine trees and silence. Samuel set up his backup gear. Claire watched him copy files onto multiple SSDs, each one with a different encrypted schema. Can you publish it anonymously? She asked. No. The source metadata would trace back to my research credentials, and if I strip them, the science won't be trusted. She chewed her lip. Then we need a third party. He frowned. Someone in biotech, or the press. Someone who can verify the work and drop it publicly with both barrels. Samuel stood still thinking. Dr. Alan Petrov, MIT, former advisor. Brilliant, but cautious. Too cautious. He pulled out a burner phone and typed one word. You awake? No reply. Outside, the wind picked up. The sound of it against the trees made Samuel tense. He peered through the blinds. Shadows shifted in the woods. You expecting anyone? He asked. Claire shook her head. Samuel reached into his duffel and pulled out a flare gun. She blinked. You serious? He nodded. They erased my lab, my accounts, and locked my emails in one night. I'm not waiting for someone to put a bullet in my spine. A car passed on the distant road. Both of them went still. Then the headlights kept going. Claire exhaled slowly. We've got maybe 48 hours before they catch up. Samuel turned to her. Then let's make every minute count. In a facility deep beneath Langley's Atlanta compound, 2 men in surgical masks loaded a file onto a black drive labeled Marker X. This is the CKR codebase, one said. Langley watched through the glass. Run counter simulations. Find a flaw, a mutation risk, anything. And if there's none? Langley smiled faintly. Then we create one. Chapter 3. Whispers from the Past. The sun rose over Lake Elmore with all the subtlety of a reluctant apology. Samuel stood on the cabin's deck, wrapped in a blanket, coffee steaming in his hand. Below, mist hovered just inches from the glassy surface of the water. Nature was oblivious, and perhaps that's what unnerved him most. Inside the cabin, Claire paced in front of a whiteboard they'd propped against the fireplace. It was covered in names, dates, corporate logos, and arrows scrolled in permanent marker. At the center, CKR-13, the cure. Start from the top, Claire said. I need to know exactly how this began. Samuel closed the sliding door behind him, exhaled through his nose, and sat opposite her. You're not gonna like it. He told her about the funeral, about Miriam. The experimental trial she'd begged him not to approve. The look in her eyes the day she lost her voice. And the last words he ever heard her say. "Promise me you'll make them pay." "I left oncology after that," he said, voice hollow. "Spent 2 years building bioinformatics tools, teaching, dicking around with fish genes, anything but cancer." "So what changed?" Claire asked, softly. "I read a report in The Lancet, a Chinese study on a protein anomaly in mole rats. Something about cellular oxygen use and oxidative resilience." Claire raised an eyebrow. "That's not sexy." Samuel smiled faintly. "It was to me. Then, he explained how he reverse-engineered the anomaly into zebrafish. Saw something strange, tumor regression without mutation. Then tested on engineered mice, same result. But that's where it should have stopped," he said. "I didn't have funding, no institutional backing, it was just curiosity." "What made you go further?" Claire asked. Samuel stood and pulled a dusty folder from his backpack. Inside were hand-drawn charts, annotated logs, and a faded photo of Miriam. She did. They spent the next 4 hours organizing the data into digestible chunks. Claire's experience with whistleblower cases was invaluable. She flagged metadata risks, scrubbed university watermarks, and helped Samuel prepare a clean version of the findings, one that could pass independent peer review without risking exposure of its source. "Still needs a signature," he said. "No one will believe it if it just appears online." Claire crossed her arms. "You got anyone who owes you a favor?" Samuel hesitated. "Alan Petrov." "Who?" "My mentor, biogeneticist, MIT. He's cautious, but smart." Claire nodded. "We'll need smart." Dr. Alan Petrov lived in a high-rise overlooking the Charles River. Clean lines, minimal furniture, and enough academic awards to wallpaper a Boeing 747. He read Samuel's email at 4:03 p.m. and stared at the encrypted attachment without clicking. He knew what CKR13 was. Not specifically, but the metadata header was familiar. He'd helped Samuel design it years ago. Petrov deleted the email. Then he retrieved it from the bin, then deleted it again. He poured a drink, then opened the file. The next 3 hours of his life were spent rechecking equations, cross-validating protein folding models, and silently mouthing the words "holy shit" 12 times. Then came the knock at his door. 2 men, black suits, smiles like razors. "Dr. Petrov, we'd like a word." Back at the lake house, Samuel's Burner phone buzzed once. Then again. Blocked number. He didn't answer. Claire was at the whiteboard, connecting logos: Pharmadyne, Everbio, Dynarex, AstraTech, all corporations with major oncology portfolios. All with a history of buying small research labs and shelving patents. "They own everything from IV drip patents to morphine reservoirs," she said. "If cancer ends, they bleed money." Samuel rubbed his temples. "I used to believe science always won in the end." Claire gave him a hard look. "It doesn't. People do." That night, Samuel dreamt of Miriam. She stood in a lab, hair grown back, eyes full of light. But as he stepped toward her, the lab dissolved into fire. The mouse cage melted. The DNA chains unraveled. He woke in a cold sweat. At 6:12 a.m., Samuel's phone lit up. Alan Petrov. Encrypted voicemail received. He played it, hands trembling. "Sam. Jesus Christ, what have you done? This thing, it's real, isn't it? Listen to me. You can't trust the system. They came to see me. Government adjacent, but not government. I'm forwarding your file to 3 international journals anonymously. After that, I'm disappearing. You should too." Claire watched him from across the room. "They got to him? Not yet, but he knows the clock's ticking." Over the next 24 hours, Claire uploaded the CKR13 package to an air-gapped machine. Samuel hand-labeled 5 USB drives with unique aliases and physical signatures. 2 were mailed to peer-reviewed oncology journals in Switzerland and South Korea. 1 was hidden in a rural Vermont church's confessional booth, wedged behind loose brick. 1 was dropped in a charity donation bin in Queens, embedded inside a decommissioned Kindle. The final drive stayed in Samuel's coat pocket. "We don't have a plan B," he said. "We've got 5 of them," Claire replied, "and this time it's not in your sock." At a discreet facility outside Washington, D.C., Victor Langley received a file marked CKR13 Dissemination Mapped. Pins on a digital map flared across the Northeast. He pressed a button on his desk. Activate Sable Team. At the lake house, Claire was recharging a portable hard drive when she froze. Did you hear that? Samuel muted the laptop. Footsteps, outside, slow, purposeful. She reached for her sat phone. Samuel grabbed the flare gun again. Then came the knock. Soft, rhythmic. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. Claire mouthed, "Not cops." Samuel crept to the back window. 2 figures in dark tactical gear crouched behind the firewood stack. Suppressed weapons. Military stance. He turned back to Claire. "We're blown." She nodded, already packing. The back door opened onto a sloping hill of frozen leaves. Claire led. Samuel followed, clutching the final drive in the mouse cage. Shots rang out, suppressed dull flints that cracked into tree trunks and kicked up dirt. One grazed Samuel's arm. He bit down a scream. They reached the tree line and scrambled down a ravine, vanishing into dense brush. By the time Sable Team entered the cabin, it was empty. But the whiteboard had one final message scrawled across it. "The cure exists. Killing us won't stop it." Langley got the photo within 5 minutes. His reply, "Then kill everyone they talk to." Samuel and Claire drove south, windows fogged, adrenaline still coursing. "What now?" she asked. Samuel stared at the blood-soaked bandage on his arm, the tiny mouse asleep in its cage. "We go public, fully, all in." Claire frowned. "And then?" Samuel smiled darkly. "Then we watch the world decide who it believes, a man with nothing left to lose, or the people who've been profiting off death for decades." Chapter 4. The Cure is Worth Billions. On the 42nd floor of the Pharmadyne International Tower in New York, the boardroom lights dimmed. 6 executives sat in silence around a monolithic glass table as a projection began to play. No sound, just footage, grainy. Time-stamped security cam footage from University of Vermont Lab 7B. A man in a lab coat, a mouse cage, a shrinking tumor under UV light, a protein folding sequence on screen, and finally a single line of code, CKR13. The room remained silent until the lights returned. Then, "Jesus Christ," muttered the CFO. Victor Langley stood at the far end, leaning against the window, looking down on Midtown like it belonged to him. He turned slowly. "Gentlemen, ladies, what you've just seen is not a hoax or a theory. It's the raw feed from a breakthrough that, if allowed to continue, will gut the entire global oncology market in under 18 months. He walked back to the table, placed a printed dossier down. CKR13 triggers programmed cell death in cancer cells without damaging healthy tissue. It's been validated in vivo, mice, zebrafish, possibly early human tests. Our intel says 5 anonymous packages with the raw formula were sent to verified third-party labs in Zurich, Seoul, and now. And Queens. The CEO, a blonde woman in her 60s named Elizabeth Rowe, crossed her arms. "So we stop it." Langley's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Stopping it is easy. Containing the fallout, less so." The Pharmadyne board had seen disruption before. Mergers, lawsuits, patent wars. But this was different. This wasn't just a competitor. This was the end of their industry. The oncology sector accounted for over 28% of global pharmaceutical revenue. That meant $460 billion a year. Not counting the trickle-up, hospitals, insurance premiums, chemotherapy delivery systems, palliative care supply chains. If CKR13 became public and credible, their market would collapse like a kicked anthill. The question wasn't whether to stop it, it was how many bodies they'd have to step over to do it. Claire drove while Samuel typed feverishly on a laptop, tethered through a burner SIN. The car was a rented Ford Fusion, swapped the night before outside a cash-only motel. 2 responses from Zurich, he said. Both confirm early markers. The protein cascade works. They've asked for tissue samples. "We can't send them," Claire replied, eyes on the road. "Not without exposure." "I know." He paused, rubbing his temples. His left arm ached from the gunshot graze. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours in 3 days. But the data was multiplying. Everywhere the cure went, it left a trail of astonishment. "I think we go wide," he said. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Define wide." "I mean press, social media, podcasts, leaks to government watchdogs, everything, all at once. We overload the system. Claire was quiet for a moment. You realize they'll come at us with everything, legally, digitally, physically. They already have. At Langley's direction, Pharmadyne's legal arm issued 16 Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown requests within 24 hours of the first journal leak. They claimed the CKR13 protein model was a derivative of an old cancer study funded by the NIH in 1998. Just enough legal ambiguity to sow doubt. Simultaneously, Pharmadyne's PR team launched an anonymous smear campaign. Dubious scientist claims cancer cure. Experts warn of danger. University disavows rogue researcher behind miracle cure. Too good to be true. The trouble with CKR13. The headlines hit Twitter and Reddit within the hour. Claire read one aloud as they sat in a rest stop outside Baltimore. They're painting you like a lunatic. Look at this one. Samuel Kline's Cancer Conspiracy, Science or Suicide Cult. Samuel just smiled darkly. They're scared. Inside a secure NIH data vault, a man named Dr. Terrence Ward reviewed flagged oncology research dating back to the mid-90s. Buried in the archives was a 3-page note from a deceased postdoc referencing an apoptotic anomaly triggered by zinc interference. Ward squinted. The protein prefix matched the first sequence from CKR13. He turned to his assistant. Pull the full sample log and alert internal oversight. If this was known in '98 and sat untested, we've got a bomb under our feet. At a suburban diner in Delaware, Claire tapped out an encrypted message to her contacts at The Intercept, ProPublica, and The Guardian. This is it, she said. The full data dump. Time-stamped, verified, ready to blow open. Samuel passed her a secondary link, one tied to an IP-hopping chain that mimicked a data breach rather than a whistleblower. They'll deny it, of course, she said. They always do. He paused, looking around the diner. Families, waitresses, a little girl sipping chocolate milk with a bald head and a surgical mask. Samuel's voice dropped to a whisper. How many people are dying this week, today, this hour, while they stall and smear? Claire didn't answer. Langley watched the leak go live from his private bunker beneath a Manhattan brownstone. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. He just lifted his phone. Begin protocol Mercy Black. Mercy Black was an off-the-books program designed for 3 things. 1. Discredit. 2. Disappear. 3. Destroy. Phase 1 had begun already. Media saturation. Phase 2 activated at midnight. At a roadside motel in Virginia, a custodian found a body, burned beyond recognition in room 6B. No ID. The fire department suspected a meth lab explosion. That's what the report would say. No one would notice the missing journalist who'd been tracking Pharmadyne's offshore subsidiaries. Phase 3, destruction, would come if the data breach couldn't be contained, and Langley knew it couldn't, so he reached for the second phone. They entered the city under heavy fog. Claire's contact at The Guardian, Layla Onassi, agreed to meet them at a quiet cafe near DuPont Circle. She was late. 10 minutes turned to 20. Then a different woman walked in, mid-30s, tall, black blazer, no visible weapon. She sat beside Samuel and didn't introduce herself. You need to come with me, now. Your lives are in danger. Claire leaned in. And you are? Reza Malik, FDA Oversight Division. And before you ask, no, I'm not here officially. I'm what you call a friendly ghost. Samuel studied her. You're real? She took out a flash drive, slid it across the table. This is from our internal compliance logs. You're not the first to get this close, but you might be the first to survive it. Reza took them to a brownstone wired like Fort Knox. She pulled up a laptop. What you've created, CKR13, isn't just disruptive, it's nuclear. Do you know how many oncology drugs are in FDA fast-track review right now? Samuel nodded. Hundreds. Try 932. She turned the screen. This is what gets disrupted if your cure is proven viable. Stock portfolios, research grants, entire investment wings. Samuel stared at the list. Claire crossed her arms. So what, you want us to pull back? Reza laughed. Dark. No. I want to help you finish the job. In the next 48 hours, the data went worldwide. Verified by Swiss and Korean labs. Reviewed by a decentralized group of independent researchers. Claire's contacts posted encrypted video interviews with Samuel. His face was obscured, voice modulated, but the truth rang clear. The story was out, the cure was real, and the world began to believe. Victor Langley stood before an empty fireplace, drink in hand, staring at a photograph on the mantel, a younger version of himself in uniform, flanked by his brother, lost to leukemia in 1984. His assistant entered. "It's out, everywhere, we can't stop it." Langley didn't respond. He simply whispered, "Then bury the man. If we can't kill the idea, we kill its prophet." Chapter 5, Run. The first sign came just before dawn. Samuel had been lying awake on the fold-out couch in Reza Malik's safe house, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone somewhere was watching him breathe. Then a car door slammed outside, not close, half a block down, but distinct. A second slam followed, heavy boots on wet pavement. Claire appeared in the doorway of the small living room, fully dressed, her hand gripping a compact Glock like it belonged there. "You hear that?" Samuel nodded. Reza appeared behind her, barefoot, a cig tucked under her arm. She gestured for silence, then used two fingers to draw back the curtain just a sliver. Two black SUVs idled at opposite corners of the street. No headlights, no markings. The kind of vehicles used when someone wanted to look like law enforcement without needing a warrant. Reza stepped back from the curtain. "We've got at least 4, she murmured. "Likely 2 inside already. They're waiting for confirmation." Samuel looked up, jaw clenched. "Confirmation of what?" Reza stared at him evenly. "That you're still breathing." Claire went into motion first, grabbing her shoulder bag, slinging the laptop into its padded sleeve. Samuel grabbed the hard drive and slipped it into the hidden pouch in his coat lining. He checked the mouse enclosure, empty. They'd left the creature in the van 2 days ago. Safer that way. Reza popped the hatch on the safe house's rear crawl space. "We leave now. We've got 30 seconds to reach the back alley before they cover the perimeter." Samuel hesitated. "What happens if we don't?" "Then your story ends in an accidental gas leak." They slid into the crawl space, boots scraping against insulation and dirt. Claire moved like someone who'd done this before. Reza followed last, replacing the hatch silently. Samuel grunted as he squeezed out the rear vent and rolled onto a frost-covered lawn behind the property. A broken chain-link fence led into a narrow alley between brownstones. It was still dark, but barely. "We split at the main road," Reza whispered. "Head to Union Station separately, use crowd cover. If they recognize you, don't stop. No hesitation." Samuel tried to nod. Couldn't. His throat was dry. Claire reached out, touched his arm. "Focus, Sam. You've already survived worse." The trio dispersed like shadows. Samuel turned left, disappearing between dumpsters, emerging onto U Street with a baseball cap low over his eyes. He walked like a man with a hangover and no purpose. Pedestrians passed without glancing. Claire used a side entrance to a laundromat, ducked out through the back, then merged with a school group headed toward the metro. Reza walked straight up Connecticut Avenue, phone to her ear, posture tight and confident, broadcasting decoy energy to anyone watching. In a darkened basement beneath the Hudson Yards data complex, Victor Langley stood before a holographic map with real-time GPS heat signals. 2 red tags had gone cold, Claire and Samuel. 1 blue tag, Reza Malik, still active. His assistant looked up. "We've lost visual. Looks like they used coordinated crowd disruption." Langley didn't flinch. "They're headed for Union Station. Intercept them there, quietly, and no bodies this time. We're past that window. They need to vanish." Union Station buzzed with early morning commuters, security announcements, and the smell of burnt coffee. Samuel leaned against the vending machine, watching Gate 9. His heart thudded in his chest like a faulty motor. Claire appeared at his side. "You look like shit," she said. "You look like someone I'd follow off a cliff." They exchanged a tired smile. Reza slipped in behind them, eyes scanning the mezzanine. "We've got 2 tails, possibly 3. You board the 714 to Boston. Window seats. Don't talk. Don't look back." Samuel shook his head. "What about you?" "I'm getting on a different train. I'll meet you at the rendezvous. And if I don't show, assume I'm dead." They boarded. Claire sat beside Samuel, head down, scrolling through encrypted emails on her phone. The train pulled out of the station slowly, the cityscape giving way to early light and frozen rail yards. Only once they hit full speed did Samuel speak. "I feel like I should be relieved." Claire looked at him. "You will be, if we live long enough to see this through." And he remembered walking into Dr. Petrov's lab at MIT for the first time. Young, naive, overflowing with optimism. Petrov had once told him, "Science will always beat politics in the long run, but politics will beat the scientist first." He hadn't understood what that meant until now. "I used to believe the cure would be the hard part." Claire didn't answer. She stared out the window as the train carved through sleeping suburbs. At the Medical Institute of Zurich, a team of researchers, unaffiliated with any major pharma group, completed their independent replication of CKR-13's efficacy. Their statement: "We have verified tumor regression in 12 mammalian test subjects with no cytotoxic damage. CKR-13 is real. It is the most promising cancer therapeutic agent we have ever seen." They published the results to a public blockchain, with one sentence embedded in every translation: "This knowledge belongs to the world." Senator Riva Morales held up the report with shaking hands. "I want to know why the National Institutes of Health had preliminary data on this compound 27 years ago and never followed up." A man in a suit from the FDA cleared his throat. "There were procedural hurdles." Morales slammed the table. "People died. Billions were spent keeping the terminal on life support while we let the cure rot in a filing cabinet." The hearing room erupted into chaos. Outside, the press already had their sound bites. The dam had cracked. A pause. Langley sat in the backseat of a limousine, heading toward a private airstrip. His assistant showed him the Zurich leak on a tablet. "Too late," the man said. "It's over." Langley stared out the tinted window. "No," he whispered. "It's just changing." Samuel and Claire stepped off the platform into frigid Boston air. Claire's burner phone buzzed. A single message: "Get to the Lion's Head Hotel, 3rd floor, no paper trail, room 312. Deleted the message instantly. They hailed a cab and melted into the city. Room 312 smelled of bleach and faded carpet, but it was private, safe. Samuel collapsed into the armchair. Claire locked the door behind them and drew the curtains. "Now what?" she asked. He looked up at her, eyes sunken but burning with fire. "Now we finish it. Full data, full code, real names, real faces. We go public. No masks, no distortion. If they're going to kill us, we make it the most watched assassination in history." Claire nodded. "I know who we call." Claire's livestream channel, previously dormant, sprang to life. The thumbnail, the cure code, Samuel Kline speaks. In under 3 minutes, there were 800,000 viewers. By 15 minutes, the feed was mirrored across over 300 networks. Samuel sat before the camera. No voice modulation, no fear. He spoke clearly, quietly, with the weight of someone who had nothing left to lose but the truth. "I'm not a prophet. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who lost the love of his life to a disease we were told was unbeatable. I buried her with the belief that the system did everything it could." He looked straight into the lens. "They didn't." He held up the drive. "This is CKR-13, a sequence that causes controlled cell death in every form of cancer we've tested. The data has been verified in Zurich and Seoul. The American government has known about precursors to this treatment since 1998. They did nothing. Why? Because cancer is profitable, but not anymore." He paused. "If you see this, they may already be trying to silence me. Let them try. But if they do, if they come for me, remember one thing: they can kill a man. They cannot kill an idea whose time has come." The screen went black. 1 million people stared at their phones, their tablets, their televisions, and one thought passed through them like a voltage surge: they'll never be able to hide this again. Chapter 6: Gene Trap. By the 3rd morning after the livestream, the world was no longer the same. Switzerland, South Korea, Iceland, and New Zealand had all confirmed the validity of CKR-13. Academic journals fast-tracked emergency peer review under pressure from medical associations. One respected geneticist called it the Rosetta Stone of oncology. But the celebration was short-lived, because Langley had already planted the bomb. At an upscale lab outside Zurich, Dr. Emil Varga stared at a blinking sequence of DNA on his screen. His expression was unreadable, the room silent except for the rhythmic tick of a wall-mounted clock. Claire and Samuel sat across from him. Reza stood watch near the door. "You said the protein chain was stable," Varga said. Samuel nodded. It is. We verified it across 3 platforms. Varga turned the monitor. Then, explain this. The screen showed a simulated replication of CKR13 in a human genome. At iteration number 247, the protein folded into a loop, triggered a secondary chain reaction, and activated an unrelated gene cluster, APC17, normally dormant. In the model, the cell didn't just die, it collapsed into necrosis. Samuel leaned in, frowning. That's impossible. APC17 isn't part of the cascade. I know, Varga said quietly. But it is now. 3 weeks prior, during a late-night intrusion at the University of Vermont server room, Langley's operative had inserted a modified file fragment into the sequencing dataset Samuel used for validation. It was small, less than 1 kilobyte, but it changed everything. It turned CKR13 from a miracle into a loaded gun. Claire paced in the hallway outside the Zurich lab, hands in her jacket pockets, eyes hard. They knew, she said. They knew the data would go public, so they sabotaged it, then waited for us to hang ourselves. Reza's jaw clenched, and when it starts failing, they discredit the whole thing. Samuel sat on a bench, head in his hands. I didn't even check the source integrity. I was so focused on getting it out. Claire knelt in front of him. This isn't your fault. You didn't build the trap, you just walked into it. The media shifted within hours. New cancer cure triggers deadly reactions in mice. Is CKR13 too dangerous to pursue? From hope to hazard, the collapse of the miracle drug. The American Cancer Association released a statement. Initial excitement over CKR13 was premature. Safety concerns must be addressed before further testing. The rush to validate it may have put lives at risk. Claire read it aloud in the Zurich hotel. Reza tossed her phone across the room. They're burying it, fast. Samuel was silent. No, they're not burying it. They're burying me. But not everyone bought the narrative. In Berlin, a rogue biochemist named Jürgen Rolf, a former Merck researcher turned open-source pioneer, posted a video explaining how to verify whether the gene trigger was real or a synthetic insertion. His upload was taken down within an hour, but not before a dozen mirrors appeared on GitHub, Reddit, and an underground medical forum called White Petrie. Inside one of the posts, a user named Greymoth uploaded side-by-side gene maps from Samuel's original dataset and the tainted public release. The difference was clear. A 984-byte sequence that hadn't been there before, inserted from a file labeled Marker X. Claire stared at it. That's our fingerprint. Reza nodded. We've got proof. They doctored the cure. In their Zurich safehouse, Claire outlined their next move on a whiteboard. We restore the original genome. We scrub the sabotage. Then we leak both, the real cure and proof of the corruption. Samuel rubbed his eyes. But if we leak the clean version now and someone gets it wrong, if there's one error, we're done. Reza stepped in. Then we do it live. One shot, one audience, no cuts. We walk the public through it ourselves. Samuel stared at her. You want a global tutorial in gene splicing? I want the world to see your cure in real time, on untainted code, before they get bored and move on to the next viral cat video. They moved to a secure biotech facility in Liechtenstein, provided by one of Reza's former FDA contacts who'd gone rogue. The lab had everything: sequencing tech, isolated server rooms, independent broadcast capability. Samuel worked for 36 hours straight. Claire slept in shifts, editing the presentation. Reza installed surveillance countermeasures and a portable broadcast link that would beam the video to 10 separate decentralized hosts. They called it The Code Live. Langley watched the teaser trailer from his office. They're still trying. His assistant grimaced. The Rolf video spread further than we thought. The narrative's cracking. Langley leaned back in his chair. Then we changed the stakes. He picked up his phone. Greenlight Proxy Hammer. Proxy Hammer was Pharmadyne's digital kill switch, a coordinated botnet of over 1 million compromised IoT devices, designed to crash and corrupt live streams without leaving a trace. As Samuel and Claire began the live sequencing event, 10,000 viewers joined within minutes. Then, buffering, stream stalling, error, Feed unavailable. Claire swore. They're jamming the signal. Reza flipped the switch on their backup satellite uplink. 2 seconds later, it kicked in. The stream returned, choppy but active. Samuel stood before a microscope. "This," he said, holding up a slide, "is CKR-13. The real CKR-13. No sabotage, no loop triggers, no secondary gene collapses. I'm going to show you every strand, live, without edits." He began walking through the cascade. TPX5 interacting with ZN3B. Selective apoptosis. No necrosis. No off-target toxicity. Claire split the screen. Left side showed the tainted gene sequence. Right side, the clean original. Viewers watched as the sabotage was exposed line by line. Reza monitored the back end. Viewership just hit 2.1 million. We're trending in Germany, South Africa, Brazil. Major outlets hesitated. Then cautiously, tentatively, headlines began to reverse course. CKR-13 sabotaged. Leaked data suggests cover-up. Whistleblower shows pharma interference in cure development. Claire smiled as she read them. Samuel looked like a man teetering on the edge of collapse, but he finished the stream. And when he turned off the mic, the lab was silent. Then Claire reached over and hugged him. Not professionally, not tactically, just as a human who finally believed they might be able to breathe again. In Washington, D.C., Senator Morales introduced a bill called the Genetic Integrity Act, citing Claire and Samuel's data and calling for an independent international tribunal on pharma interference in medical breakthroughs. Langley's legal team scrambled. Documents were seized. An old collaborator at the Department of Health turned whistleblower. A leaked video showed Langley ordering Protocol Mercy Black. He resigned 3 days later. His final public words: "History will prove we were protecting the public from chaos." But history had already made up its mind. A week later, in the Swiss Alps, Samuel sat alone at the edge of a quiet lake. No internet, no noise, just wind. Claire joined him, handing him a thermos of coffee. "It's not over," she said. He nodded. "But for the first time, I think we've got a chance." Chapter 7, Anita's Silence. The envelope had no return address. It arrived in Reza Malik's Zurich mailbox 3 days after the live broadcast. Postmarked from a small village in northern Italy. No fingerprints, no visible writing on the back. Inside, a single SD card, and a note, printed in courier font. "Tell Samuel I'm sorry, A." Samuel held the SD card between his thumb and forefinger, like it was a ticking bomb. Claire set up an air-gapped laptop and ran a malware scan twice. Nothing triggered. Still, Reza kept a sidearm on the table beside her, like digital data might kick down the door. The card held one folder: CKR-13 Original, Anita, Video, MP4. Samuel pressed play. The footage was time-stamped, 3 weeks before the live stream. Anita Singh sat alone in a sterile lab, hair pinned back, face gaunt. She looked tired, older. The years since Samuel had last seen her had left shadows under her eyes. The camera was static. The room behind her was plain, but her voice was clear. "Sam, if you're seeing this, it means I failed to keep it quiet. Or maybe I finally stopped being a coward." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "They took me 2 days after you discovered the early sequence. At first, it was just questions, then threats. They knew everything. Your protocols, your backups, even the mouse." Samuel's stomach turned. "I was offered a deal. Discredit the sample, alter the metadata, delete the backups. In exchange, they'd leave my family alone." She looked down. "And I did it. I injected the corrupted line into one of the protein cascades. I deleted the original file from the server, but not the drive you kept. I hoped, God, I hoped you'd keep your copy offline, safe." Claire and Reza exchanged a glance. Samuel leaned forward, jaw clenched. "She didn't vanish," he whispered. "She was blackmailed. I told myself I did it to protect my daughter, but that's a lie. I was scared. They said they'd make me disappear, said no one would look for me. They were right." She hesitated, looked straight at the camera. "But you did it, you got it out, you survived, and now the world knows. If they kill me, that's fine. Just make sure no one ever forgets CKR-13 existed." She reached forward to end the recording, then paused. "Thank you for being the only person who ever believed I could be more than just a lab tech." The screen went black. Silence filled the room. Claire sat back slowly, exhaling. Reza's voice was flat. She knew she'd be dead by the time we saw this. Samuel stared at the table. "She saved it. She saved everything, even after they turned her. He ran a hand over his face. I let myself believe she betrayed me. Claire touched his arm. She didn't. She just ran out of options. They opened a bottle of wine that night, not to celebrate, but to honor the dead. Anita Singh had once been more than just Samuel's assistant. She'd been his first real collaborator. The person who pushed him to keep going when his grant was rejected. Who once told him, if we crack this, they'll never forgive us for doing it outside the machine. She was right, and they hadn't forgiven her. In a private meeting 3 weeks earlier, Langley had ordered a non-violent neutralization of a rogue lab tech in Milan. The order was vague, deniable, but effective. Anita's disappearance had never made the news. Just another missing woman in a world where vanishing quietly was easier than being heard. The fallout from the live stream continued to ripple. Senator Morales formed a bipartisan task force, demanding internal reviews at the FDA and the Department of Health. Reza provided testimony, off the record but damning. Claire's channel exploded, gaining 2.5 million new subscribers in under 10 days. Samuel's face became a symbol, memed, lionized, and scrutinized. Protesters marched outside Pharmadyne's U.S. offices in D.C., holding signs that read, "Cure, not capital. Cancer isn't a business model. Remember Anita." The World Health Organization issued a formal recommendation. CKR-13 and its variants warrant immediate further research under the direct oversight of independent international agencies. No corporate or defense contractors shall be permitted involvement. Langley's empire cracked. His resignation became a foregone conclusion. But Samuel knew it wasn't over. Not yet. 3 days after receiving Anita's video, Samuel walked alone through the cobbled streets of Bern, hood up, hands buried in his coat. He stopped at a bookstore, one of those ancient shops that still smelled like mildew and ink. Inside, he found a dusty old textbook on molecular ethics. It reminded him of when this had all been about curiosity, wonder, healing, not survival. He bought it with a 10-franc note and walked back into the cold. That night, he and Claire sat on the roof of the Zurich safe house, wrapped in blankets, watching planes cross the sky. Claire took a sip of hot brandy. "Do you regret it?" Samuel didn't look at her. "No. I regret that she died afraid, that we couldn't protect her." Claire nodded. "But you saved millions, Sam." He turned to her, eyes tired but bright. "No, we did." "Prepared, try." Reza returned the next morning with encrypted hardware from White Petri, the underground network that had been duplicating and validating CKR-13. The clean version is now on 12 independent clusters, air-gapped, untraceable. If we're taken out, the data lives. Claire looked at Samuel. "So what's next?" He hesitated. "I want to make it open source." Claire blinked. "You're serious?" "I want anyone, anywhere to have access, to improve it. To make it safer, to apply it to things we haven't even thought of yet." Reza frowned. "You'll lose control of it." Samuel nodded. "Good, that's the point." 3 days later, CKR-13 was posted to an international peer-reviewed open data server under the Creative Genome license. Within hours, researchers in Kenya, India, Argentina, and Norway began uploading improvements, potential delivery mechanisms, and experimental therapy templates. A university in Brazil used CRISPR to encode the CKR-13 protein into edible algae. A lab in South Africa modified the code to target rare sarcomas. And in Tokyo, a team discovered it might also halt early-onset Alzheimer's. Samuel sat in silence, watching lines of code update in real time from 12 countries. He imagined Anita, somewhere peaceful. No lab coat, no fear. Just her voice saying, "If we crack this, they'll never forgive us. Let them never forgive us. We did it anyway." Chapter 8. The Leak. Zurich woke slowly under a sky of low-gray clouds and half-hearted snowfall. In a quiet third-floor apartment above an antique map shop, Claire Jensen stared at a blinking cursor. On screen, "Final leak, CKR-13, data plus timeline plus corruption proof." Beside her, Samuel sat with his hands clasped, elbows on the table, like a man preparing to walk into court, not change the world. Claire turned to him. "Are you sure?" He nodded once. "We've released the sequence, the science, the evidence. But this is the war crimes report." The leak included video testimony from Samuel, Reza, and 3 independent researchers confirming sabotage. Side-by-side genome chains, annotated to show the synthetic insertion. Meeting minutes from Pharmadyne internal documents, obtained via an anonymous insider. The Mercy Black Directive, a full timeline of CKR13's suppression. Anita Singh's video. At the top of the dossier was a single sentence. This is what it looks like when profit outweighs life. Claire clicked upload. The file package burst out across decentralized servers. Within 30 minutes, torrent seeds multiplied by the thousands. File mirrors spread across university portals, health forums, whistleblower sites, and activist networks. Samuel watched the tracker. 2 million downloads in the first hour. 4 million in the second. By noon, the world was on fire. BBC ran a special report, The Truth Behind the Cure, What Pharmadyne Tried to Hide. CNN aired side-by-side interviews, Senator Morales on one screen, Langley's old PR advisor on the other, sweating. Al Jazeera released a full-length documentary within 72 hours. TikTok exploded with creators stitching quotes from Anita's video over emotional monologues, medical fundraisers, and testimonials from cancer survivors, now demanding CKR13 be accelerated to clinical trials. In Johannesburg, a pediatric oncology ward threw a party with balloons and cupcakes. The children didn't understand the science, but their nurses cried as they read the screen. CKR13 shows 98.2% remission rate in independent South African trial. In Manila, a group of biotech students assembled a working model of the therapy using open-source tools, documenting every step online. In New Jersey, a man held a sign outside a Pharmadyne building. "My wife died last year. You killed her." Victor Langley sat alone in his Manhattan penthouse. The blinds were drawn. His phone, once a portal to power, now vibrated with subpoenas. The board of directors issued a statement of complete disassociation. His personal accounts were frozen, pending investigation. His passport was flagged. The king had fallen, but Langley was not done. Back in Zurich, Claire outlined the next step on the whiteboard. Now that the leak is live, they'll go nuclear with disinfo. We counter with coordinated ground messaging, testimonials, mirror uploads, human faces, real people, not abstract numbers. Reza pointed to a node labeled Latin America. Brazil and Argentina are already in. The WHO's regional offices are calling for an emergency summit. Samuel added a single word below the map. Truth. No more shadows, he said. Let's make them fight us in daylight. At night, Samuel rewatched Anita's video. He didn't cry, but he did whisper, "We did it." Then he powered off the laptop and wrote a letter to her daughter. It was simple, personal, no science, just a promise that her mother had been a hero and would never be forgotten. 3 days after the leak, Pharmadyne lobbyists unleashed a blitz across Capitol Hill. New talking points emerged. Unvetted gene therapies could destabilize global health. Unregulated sequences risk bioterrorism. Do-it-yourself cancer treatments could backfire. A group of concerned scientists published an op-ed suggesting the CKR13 movement was reckless populism disguised as hope. Reza rolled her eyes as she read it. "Check their affiliations," she muttered. Every last one of them took money from Langley's ghost foundations. Claire traced the funding trail. It led to a shell corporation in Cyprus, from there into a hedge fund, one that specialized in shorting biotech stocks. They're betting on public panic. In response, Samuel agreed to a live Q&A on The Intercept's global feed. He answered every question, gently, carefully, and without pretense. He explained protein folding to a child in Iowa. He fielded policy questions from a skeptical Canadian health minister. He comforted a woman in Poland who'd just been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And when someone asked, "What if you're wrong?" he smiled and said, "Then I'll be the first to admit it. But I'd rather risk failure than let another family bury a loved one for the sake of protecting someone's stock portfolio." The WHO, pressured by 34 nations and a global petition with over 75 million signatures, convened a historic summit in Geneva. It became known as the Health Sovereignty Conference. Claire, Reza, and Samuel were invited to speak. He stood before 180 delegates. No suit, no teleprompter, just a folded piece of paper in his hand, and the memory of everyone they'd lost etched into his voice. "You don't have to believe in me. You don't even have to like me. But believe in what you saw, what you read, what your scientists confirmed," He paused. Hope doesn't belong to corporations. It belongs to all of us. In a desperate act of sabotage, Langley attempted to leak a fake email implicating Samuel in a Chinese espionage ring. The forged metadata fell apart in 2 hours. His final act was caught on CCTV, walking into the East River just before sunrise. His body was never recovered. Within a month, 30 countries approved limited clinical trials of CKR-13 under emergency ethical waivers. 3 U.S. senators introduced legislation to cap profit margins on public health-targeted gene therapies. A coalition of researchers formed the Anita Singh Medical Liberation Trust, pledging to fund, distribute, and defend open medical breakthroughs around the globe. Claire received a plaque from a pediatric hospital in Nairobi. To Claire Jensen and Dr. Samuel Kline, because you didn't stay silent. One night, in a farmhouse outside Bern, Reza poured 3 glasses of wine. To the dead, she said. To the brave, and to the dumb bastards who thought truth could be buried. Samuel raised his glass. Claire's voice was soft. What now? Samuel looked out the window, into the night. Now, we live. Chapter 9, The World Reacts. It started as a tremor, a single breakthrough, one man, one drive, a whisper too loud to suppress, and then it cracked the world wide open. Cancer cure confirmed by independent UN panel. 39 nations approve emergency access to CKR-13. We're not afraid anymore. Protesters storm Pharmadyne's Brussels HQ. New Zealand first to administer CKR therapy in public hospital. The shift wasn't just scientific. It was philosophical. Because people, for the first time in decades, stopped believing in the myth that health was a luxury and started demanding that it be a right. The oncologist didn't expect the silence. When she delivered the first dose of CKR-13 to a 5-year-old girl with leukemia, she'd been prepared for the machines to beep, for the alarms to trigger, for her colleagues to raise objections. Instead, she watched the girl's fever break in under 6 hours. The girl's mother didn't cry. She simply covered her mouth and whispered, "It's working." Across the country, patients in trial programs began to recover. Oncology wards went quiet. Pharmacies adjusted inventory. Insurance companies scrambled. It was happening. Claire Jensen stood before a wall of screens, editing a final cut. Footage from the protests, interviews with whistleblowers, clips of Anita's video, slowed slightly for emotional clarity. Music rising underneath. This story isn't about a cure. It's about control. About what happens when systems built to protect us become systems that profit from our suffering. She paused the track, backed it up 5 seconds. Perfect. She titled it, The Cure Code, The Full Truth. Reza Malik had been called to testify before the International Court of Justice, alongside 4 other former regulators who had broken ranks. They were dubbed the Defiant Five by the press. Sitting before rows of flags, she stared down representatives who once denied every internal report she submitted. Her voice didn't shake. We were trained to protect public health, not shareholders. I was part of the system, until I saw what it cost to stay in it. Gasps echoed in the gallery. A ripple. Then applause. Samuel Kline declined every speaking engagement. He didn't go to Geneva. He didn't return to Vermont. He didn't cash in. Instead, he rented a cabin on the edge of the Alps, not far from where he'd first escaped the operatives chasing him. He planted a small vegetable garden. He read fiction. He brewed bad coffee. He walked in silence. And every week, he checked the global CKR-13 map, watching as the pins spread like flowers blooming from soil once thought sterile. Not pride, not relief, just stillness. The fallout was vast. Pharmadyne's stock collapsed by 83% in 1 quarter. 3 major insurance conglomerates filed for restructuring. Private hospital boards in the U.S. saw mass resignations. One executive famously told the press, "We built a system where curing cancer was a financial liability, and now it's eating us alive." But alongside the collapse, new industries bloomed. CKR-13-related biotech startups, decentralized research labs, open-source medical development platforms. A movement known as Metacommons took root. They called it the Healing Renaissance. In a school auditorium in Nairobi, a teacher asked her students, "Who discovered CKR-13?" Hands shot up. One girl answered, "Dr. Kline and the woman who helped him. The brave one, Anita." The teacher smiled. "And why did they do it?" A pause. Then a boy in the back said, "Because people were dying, and they couldn't let it keep happening." Senator Morales stood on the Senate floor, holding a thick stack of documents, hundreds of pages from the Pharmadyne corruption leak. For every dollar spent on cancer treatment, 25 cents went to research. The rest? Patents, lobbyists, bonuses. The cure existed. They buried it. She slammed the stack down. No more. A bill passed that same week, the Medical Transparency and Innovation Act. It required full publication of government-funded research within 60 days, or automatic public domain release. It passed 94-6. Claire visited Anita Singh's daughter in Milan. They met at a small cafe near the canal. The girl, barely a teenager, wore her mother's eyes, but not her scars. Claire handed her a pendant, silver, shaped like a DNA helix. She died to protect something beautiful. She never wanted you to know that pain, but she did want you to know she was brave. The girl didn't cry. She just nodded and whispered, "I know." No body was ever found, but once, in a village outside Dubrovnik, a woman selling cigarettes claimed she met a man who looked just like the devil on the news. He paid cash, wore gloves, asked where he could find peace. No one believed her. But the rumor spread. Some say Langley lives under a false name in a remote monastery, still watching the world he helped poison. Others say he died in that river, leaving behind nothing but ash and spreadsheets. Samuel never asked. He didn't care. CKR-13 entered Phase 3 trials. A child in Syria was the first refugee to receive it, via a mobile gene therapy unit. A farmer in Bangladesh got access through a nonprofit that partnered with Medicommons. In Paris, a man who once sold synthetic painkillers on the black market now worked in a lab, helping replicate CKR-13 for tumors in dogs. The ripple never stopped, and no one could stop it. Because the cure wasn't a secret anymore. It was a seed, planted in the soil of truth, and watered by every voice that refused to be silenced. One morning, Samuel sat on the porch of his mountain cabin. Snow dusted the trees. His inbox held messages from 6 continents. Invitations, awards, requests, pleas. He ignored them all. Instead, he looked up at the clouds and smiled. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. But somewhere, a child was running for the first time without pain. And that was enough. Epilogue, legacy, 10 years later. The woman at the podium adjusted her glasses, tucked a lock of gray-streaked hair behind her ear, and looked out over the crowd. The auditorium was packed. Students, researchers, journalists, and survivors filled every seat. Some stood in the back. Others watched on screens across the globe. A large banner hung above her, the Kline Foundation. A decade of cure without barriers. She cleared her throat. The room fell silent. "My name is Dr. Mira Canto. I'm a geneticist, a mother, a survivor, and one of the first patients cured by CKR-13. Murmurs rippled gently across the room. She continued, "I was 15 when I was diagnosed. Terminal. CKR hadn't been approved yet, but my doctor, my real doctor, gave it to me anyway. He lost his job, but I got to live." She smiled softly. "And today, I get to honor the man who made that possible." Samuel Kline watched the speech from an old laptop on a wooden desk, surrounded by notebooks, framed photos, and the faint smell of firewood. His beard was white now, his posture curved with age, but his eyes were still sharp. He stirred honey into his tea and listened. He'd told them he wouldn't come, but he was here, quietly, privately, watching his legacy unfold from the shadows, just as he'd always preferred. CKR-13 has now been administered in 109 countries. It's estimated to have saved or extended the lives of over 38 million people. Not just the rich, not just the lucky, everyone. Applause rose but was gently hushed. People sometimes ask me what Samuel Kline was like. I tell them he wasn't a savior. He didn't wear a cape. He didn't lead protests. He didn't shout into microphones. She smiled again. He just refused to quit, even when it nearly killed him. Even when the world told him no. CKR-13 became the blueprint, not just for cancer therapy, but for how medicine was shared, built, and protected. Medicommons expanded. Dozens of similar cures were released under its framework. Autoimmune disorders, gene-corrective blindness, early-stage ALS treatments. Open-source medical science wasn't a trend. It was a revolution. And it traced back to one scared, grieving scientist in a cold Vermont lab, trying to make good on a promise whispered to his dying wife. Later that night, as snow fell softly on the mountainside, Samuel stepped outside. He walked out to the tree he'd planted a decade ago, a pear sapling now tall and firm. He touched its bark, looked up at the stars, then whispered, "We did it, Miriam." And the wind, impossibly, seemed to carry her voice back. Yes, you did. The cure lived on, the lie was buried, and the truth took root, forever. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and tell your friends about my listening library.